while we're starting the show. All right, here we go. Good evening. Welcome to the Week in Review. I'm Paris Schutz. We'll be joined by our Week in Review guests in just a moment, but first, some of today's top stories. 2 Chicago residents have died of complications due to monkeypox. This according to an announcement today from the Chicago Department of Public Health. The agency says the 2 residents had weakened immune systems and other health conditions. Public health officials say there have only been 32 reported deaths globally among 75,000 known cases. Former AT&T Illinois president tied to new corruption charges against House Speaker Mike Madigan pleads not guilty. Paul LaChiazza is charged with 5 corruption counts alleging he orchestrated a scheme to pay off a Madigan ally in exchange for the former speaker's support on legislation. AT&T has admitted to the scheme in a deferred prosecution deal. Madigan is also charged in connection with this case on top of 22 counts related to alleged bribery involving ComEd. Chicago Police Department defends the decision not to suspend a cop for an alleged association with a hate group. Superintendent David Brown answered questions before a city council budget hearing today. This as an inspector general report recommended removing an officer after an investigation found an association with the Proud Boys white nationalist group. But Brown says the allegations were not supported by a preponderance of the evidence. He says the department did find some minor violations of police department conduct in its internal investigation. And more on this story on our website. A familiar face might get a chance to return to his old job with the White Sox. Multiple reports say the team is set to interview former manager Ozzie Guillen for its current managerial opening. Guillen won the World Series with the club in 2005 and also had a stint managing the Marlins. He's since been a White Sox television analyst. The team parted ways with former manager Tony La Russa just before the end of the season. Who knows? Everything old might be new again. Early voting is underway for next month's midterms, and WTTW News has you covered with all the information you could ever want about what's on your ballot. Our WTTW voter guide is now live on our website, featuring a rundown of local races, candidate bios, and statements. You can also check out our explainer video about what exactly happens to your ballot after you vote. Just go to WTTW.com/voter guide, and you'll have it all right at your fingertips. And now to our Week in Review panel. Joining us are Lynn Sweet, Washington Bureau Chief for the Chicago Sun-Times, Rick Pearson, Chief Political Reporter for the Chicago Tribune, Monica Eng, Political Reporter for Axios in Chicago, and Rick Tellender, Sports Columnist at the Chicago Sun-Times. Let's get right into it. Candidates for Governor Darren Bailey and incumbent J.B. Pritzker threw punch after punch at their final debate this week. Take a look.
Darren Bailey is a Trump extremist. He opposes abortion. He thinks it's okay to force a 13-year-old rape victim to give birth, wants to end the state's minimum wage and throw Chicagoans out of Illinois.
Chicago is the nightmare called Pritzkerville, and it's still 2 weeks from Halloween.
Darren Bailey has surrounded himself with racist, misogynistic, homophobic, xenophobic people and organizations, including chasing after the chief among them, Donald Trump.
Friends, life is worse today than it's ever been in Illinois. Nothing has gotten better in the last 4 years.
Rick Pearson, 2 debates in this cycle. They're over now. Has anything changed in this race as a result?
No. I mean, the templates were established going in, that you've got Bailey's chief argument against Pritzker is to play the crime card and the uncertainty about the Safety Act and try to raise fears there. And then you've got, Pritzker capitalizing on the fact of the Supreme Court's ruling on abortion, and that Illinois is kind of this island in the United States for being able to provide abortion services for women.
Rick Tellender, I won't presume anything, but say you're a undecided voter. Did anything get illuminated for you with these debates?
No, I don't think so. It's just, I don't know how people shake hands after things like this, after the things you say. And it really is just, it's so stark, the difference. It's attack. You don't learn anything. You just learn that they don't like each other.
It's like the coaches exchanging embraces after a hard-fought football game.
I don't know how they do that either.
Sometimes it doesn't go so well. Lynn Sweet, this comes as a billionaire Dick Uihlein gives $2 million directly to Bailey's campaign this time. He's given $54 million in total, mostly to an allied PAC. Does this signal that Uihlein and Bailey folks still think there's a chance they can close this gap?
As long as there's money they have that runs almost every ad they do run is a negative hit against J.B. Pritzker. Yeah. Now, does that mean the ads, we still have a few weeks left, but the Uline money is paying for more than just TV ads that you see. There's a pamphlet that went even to Democratic households. You may
The fake newspapers?
No, I mean, I'm talking about ones that are explicitly about.
So in addition to
it's
the
an
newspapers.
additional little pamphlet against J.B. Pritzker. The governor has a magazine that he's been sending out, but the point is there's a lot of money and other ways to have political communication here. And yes, this $2 million shows directly that there is still some faith in the campaign.
And there are polls out there that range anywhere from having Pritzker up by 22, and then internal Bailey poll showed Bailey trailing by only 2. Should we trust any polls at this time, given what's happened over the last 5 years?
Well, the preponderance of them seem to say that Pritzker's up, and Pritzker's got the economic might behind him. And, you know, it seems like what they're good at is staying on message. And, you know, Bailey especially interrupting when the other's talking. And I thought Michael Matera did a good job of trying to say, hey, cut it out, let him talk.
At one point, she just literally shushed him. You could tell she was getting a little frustrated with all the interruptions.
I mean, we talked about the extremists in those clips, and really what you do have are two extremely different candidates here.
Yeah, if you don't know the difference and you don't know who to vote for at this point, it's not a big deal.
No, I think the governor's race, if you're undecided and you truly have not focused, though, and there are people polls show. And by the way, the Sun-Times WBEZ poll was accurate in the primary and clearly showing the lead that Darren Bailey had, which indeed held, and he became the nominee. So we have a good track record with that poll. The point being, though, that the campaign is fighting for the persuadables. Some they've identified, some not. So I think that debate did provide insight, depending on what you were looking for. It wasn't just, well, they're extreme, but if you are going to vote, there was information in there that I think could give you some insight as to what to do.
And clearly, Rick Pearson, the Pritzker camp is not taking this lightly. I mean, Pritzker's poured $38 million into his own camp. Is there any sense from Pritzker people that something could happen in the last few weeks and things could be in jeopardy?
Well, I think one example is today that they rolled out an ad with Barack Obama in it, attesting to Pritzker, and I think part of that is, one thing, it's an ad. It's not like a Obama visit, as is taking place in nearby states, even where there's a feeling that the race is in jeopardy for the Democrats. But by rolling out that ad, I think what it really is a response to the PAC that's allied with Darren Bailey that has devoted not only just direct attacks at Pritzker on crime, but has also recently started rolling out ads featuring black voices trying to tamper down.
And Darren Bailey during the debate really trying to appeal to black voters. At one point,
I don't see it as appealing as raising questions.
Raising questions about
like
whether they should vote.
Actually,
The former ABC reporter Charles Thomas saying black people should not vote for Pritzker.
Hold on. Now, he is paid to
He's
do
paid
that.
by-
I think that's important to point that out.
Yes.
It's been reported $50,000,
Yes.
and this week he was attacked by his fellow former colleagues in TV news, Ron Majors, Renee Ferguson, Mark Giangreco, who really thought that there was a problem that he
Well,
did.
and they're using kind of the news imagery, trying to kind of set up his credibility.
Which is the same as the phony newspapers that that the PAC or that Dan Proft
And I should
his
say,
PAC
I mean,
have been
it's not
associated with.
unusual for journalists to go into politics after their career in journalism. It happens.
I was thinking this is kind of like those insurance companies that used to run these ads, and it said paid endorser.
Paid testimonial.
Right. That's not disclosed, is that he is a paid staff member or
would
whatever
be,
it is.
I would wish that Dan Proft, if you're listening, to
Dan
tidy
Proft
it
runs
up.
that PAC.
To tidy it up and just say a paid vendor for the Darren Bailey campaign. Because when you're, a lot of these ads are generic and they might have some people at home or, depending on the demographic they're appealing to. And they may be actors, they may be real people, but they're trying just to get some point across. When you're using the credibility of somebody who's a very known quantity and then they're paid, it's different than if they just retired, moved on in life, and decided to do it.
Right.
It made it a volunteer opinion.
I mean, it seems like they're using the credibility of the press or former journalists to sway voters, whether it's a faux newspaper. I talked to the Illinois Board of Elections, and I said, you've dinged Prof before for using newspapers and not disclosing. And they said, this time we're not sure if we can because the financial setup is a little different. And I should say that Bailey mentioned Halloween on there. And on Monday, Justin Kaufman tells you how to dress up as a gubernatorial candidate.
This is your colleague at Axios.
Yeah, that's right, as a sexy gubernatorial candidate from Illinois this year. So read Axios to find out.
What that looks like.
I can't wash that image out of my head.
Well, read
Is this
Monday.
about where the governor buys his suits?
Well, one is going to be an Elvis wig and a very nice suit, and the other one will be a flannel shirt and some
That
cowboy
sounds like
boots.
a tribute
That's
to
a
Rod
reference, by the
Blagojevich.
way.
Right,
Those are-
right.
yeah.
Both
That's a reference to something that came up in the debate. That was
All
not
right,
an idol.
this discussion is going
It's
places I did not
it's
know it was going to
degenerate.
go, so I have to take it back. Rick, you had a story this week about the Bailey campaign deploying Election Day poll watchers led by someone who is an election denier. Does this signal that they might want to cause a little trouble on Election Day?
Well, Carol Davis is head of the Conservative Union of Illinois, and she's in league with people like Cleta Mitchell. Cleta Mitchell, who's leading a national effort of election deniers. She was on the phone call that Trump made to the Georgia Secretary of State, Brad Raffensperger, looking for those 11,000 votes. She lost her job at her law firm right after that. But these are a network of election deniers, and there is concern. Carol Davis, for example, who's leading training as a partner with the Illinois Republican Party and the Bailey campaign, she's on record as talking about wanting to start little fires in various election offices, not literally, but create havoc in these because they can't put all of them out. She denies she believes the January 6th insurrection was Antifa sponsored. She would have been there, except she had a cold, expressed disappointment over that, and she believes there's fraud in every election. So this is kind of a mindset, and as part of this recruitment
Without
effort,
pointing to any proof, we should always mention.
Absolutely. But as part of this effort, Bailey is trying to recruit 2,000 poll watchers and election judges for this period, even starting now with early voting, in what he calls high-risk precincts. And those are precincts where it's large
Sounds like
turnout.
a code word for Chicago.
Well, correct. Is what it is. So there's every
Because
possibility.
downstate Republicans have always claimed there's all kinds of fraud happening in Chicago, but we haven't really
So there's every
nailed them down on what their evidence
Yes, there's
is.
possibility that these Clay County people are going to be coming up to walk in
Well,
and
we'll
be.
see.
I'm curious, being from downstate, born and raised in Peoria, we always had this image of Chicago. What if, I mean, nobody liked what was going on in the big city. Nobody did. And they thought bodies were sent down the Chicago River into the Illinois, and they came down past us. I mean, all these stories you hear. Terrible. Well, that's true. When you're out there fishing, you'd see one go by. But so if these people are election deniers, whatever they might be, if they come up and actually poll watch and are there and they see there's nothing going on, they can't make up stuff. It might be good to have them in-house.
And both
right?
parties have
Rick,
poll watchers, we should say. Go ahead, Lynn.
Here's the thing. It's kind of moving. The new code word now is election integrity. And so you have the potential, though, of slowing things down in a voting precinct, having challenges that normally would never happen under the banner of election integrity, or we're checking this. So I think having this cadre of this team, this army of people under the banner of election integrity, which kind of is, again, it's just code for looking for problems.
And looking for reasons to maybe
Yes,
disqualify voters and say you can't
and
vote.
so we have not had this before, and that's why the Democratic Party of Illinois is aware of it, and they're going to raise their own
They'll have their
army
own
of
poll watchers as well.
but it's not the same as people who might be looking to slow things down and challenging as opposed to legal observers.
Well, what I didn't get in your story, Rick, is that Bailey's saying, oh, we want to tell people have confidence in the elections, and at the same time they're drawing doubt about the elections. Like, was it going to be?
They were encouraging people to do mail-in and to vote early.
And that's what I said. That's the big conundrum here, is because Bailey himself had raised questions about the legitimacy of the 2020 election.
Now he's saying, go vote, go vote.
Now, yes, and the legitimacy, of course, of mail-in ballots, of drop boxes, all of these kinds of things that are part of what these election deniers are concerned about. But he's like, go vote, and go vote. You can vote right now. You can do it. And he says he wants to, pardon me, he wants to restore people have lost the confidence. Well, where did the loss of confidence come from?
Exactly.
Because folks kept saying without evidence that there was fraud. Lynn, you wanted to jump in here?
So when you talk about election suppression, we might not be there yet, but if there are people watching with iPhones every drop box, there are still things you could do to make people uneasy about elections, creating issues that don't exist, or finding, making accusations
It might scare
out there.
people away and say they don't even deal with it.
It depends, because we have to see more about how this unfolds, but we know that the environment that this election is taking place
All right. Well, in the election here, the top ticket races don't look to be very competitive right now, although there are some competitive national races. I asked Illinois Senator Dick Durbin this week what he felt the odds were that his party, the Democrats, would keep the Senate.
I think they're 50-50.
Oh,
in other words, I couldn't tell you who has an advantage any given day. The differences in many of these races are 1 and 2 points. That can shift overnight.
So, Lynn, we've got these Senate races, Ohio, Pennsylvania, and Nevada. They seem to just kind of be swinging back and forth. Is there a sense that it could go either way in the next 3 weeks?
Absolutely. Throw in Arizona, too. So the swing states continue to swing. There is no sense that anyone has locked in. The thing to watch for looking ahead is if the Democrats somehow pick up 2 more seats, even if the House goes to the Republican, if the Democrats get 2 more seats in the Senate, then that neutralizes the ability of Joe Manchin of West Virginia and Kyrsten Sinema of Arizona to be 2 people who could block anything they want.
And this is where President Biden is saying, they'd have to keep both houses of Congress, but he'll put pro-choice legislation in play if they do keep both houses, which doesn't seem to be likely at this point. Let's move more local. Here's Mayor Lightfoot commenting on Police Superintendent David Brown's decision to suspend rather than fire an alleged officer with Proud Boy ties.
That officer was given a lengthy period of suspension. I don't get into the details of that, but I think it's about accountability. And I think the police department took the steps that the evidence that was gathered through the course of the 2 investigations.
Monica, this is a very strange story because an IG investigation found that this police officer had some communication and ties to the Proud Boys and then lied about meeting with the FBI about this. And then David Brown today in City Council is saying there wasn't a preponderance of the evidence, so we just suspended him. What do you make of all that?
It seems strange because according to what I read, he'd actually admitted that he lied, and that's why he was able to get this suspension, this 120-day suspension. And I just can't imagine that this is helping police relations with the community and, frankly, Lori Lightfoot's relationship with the community by saying this guy who admitted he lied about meeting with the Proud Boys is not going to be fired, even if the IG recommends it.
And I wonder if Lightfoot thinks if she has to keep a close relationship with the police superintendent or can't be seen publicly disagreeing with the police superintendent right now.
Yeah, but with everything that's going on, and you have an issue of white supremacist within the ranks of the police department.
Then these are just allegations, although the IG came out with a pretty definitive report saying that the CPD should reconsider this and think about removing it.
Reconsider it, and investigate.
Right.
So
you're saying they might not have, the internal investigation might not have been very deep.
That's my reading of it, is that the IG thinks that they needed to go back and do more investigating here to get to that preponderance of the evidence. And yes, it is an allegation, but nevertheless, you have the officer accepting 120 days And I think it was the superintendent saying that he was apologetic, and so 120 days.
The superintendent saying we only had enough evidence to maybe suspend him for 5 days, and the officer...
But yes, because he was being apologetic, he accepted the 120 days. There's something wrong there.
Well, I think it also shows that there is maybe, this is maybe a sign to be watched of the mainstreaming of Proud Boys, because the fact that we're discussing this in a way that, and I don't think we should normalize this group, so I think that's part of the cautionary tale of what's going on here. You know, I'm not here to analyze if the 5 days is right or not, but if we look back, look at how we're talking about it. Oh, it's just another group.
Well, I think there's all kinds of evidence nationwide that some of these groups have infiltrated law enforcement.
Yes, and that I think is really the thing to keep watch in Chicago and other places, is in a sense a normalization of something that should be watched and perhaps not normalized.
Superintendent Brown says he would have no, obviously, would have no tolerance for any of that. Let's move on to sports. Rick Tellender, we're so glad to have you here. The Bulls might or might not be playing right now, but we hope that folks wait till this show's over to go check it out. Zach LaVine, they give $200+ million to be their big star, and he's sitting out the first 2 games at least with a knee problem, which dogged him last year. Did the Bulls misread the medical prognosis here?
I think they might have. Now, he might be playing tonight. I'm not sure. He was sitting out.
I think he was ruled out for tonight.
For this, too? Well, I mean, it's touch and go, and he says he's fine. $200 million means that this guy's supposed to be your bell cow, so to speak. Knees are such fragile parts of a ball player's physique when you play an explosive game like Zach LaVine does. And the same is true. Lonzo Ball, they're missing him, and he looked like he was going to be a great player. He's got a bad knee. You don't know how long it takes and if it ever comes back. LaVine hurt his knee way back. I mean, when he was back with Minnesota.
It pretty much dogged him all last year.
Yes, it has. And you just hope that this isn't something that just makes him not the player he was.
Because the Bulls look like they're really on the cusp, but they're still not on the level of Milwaukee or some of the elite teams. Did they do enough in the offseason to improve their roster?
Well, probably not. But they didn't know for a long time that Lonzo Ball said, "I'm not coming back until my knee is 100%." That's 40% of your starting team with him and LaVine. So how do you build a team? You know, I was looking at the Golden State Warriors, their roster. They won last year. They are going to have a payroll of $500 million this year. You know, so this is, you can look at LaVine's $200 million in that regard, in that way, I guess, if you want to. But
and it's spread over multiple years.
Yeah, it's spread
not
over
like it's
a long
1 year.
time, and we're not going to feel sorry for any owners right now. But the bottom line is that the fans would like to see a good team, and they had what I thought was a nucleus of a very good team. Vucevic, I mean, thank God they have DeMar DeRozan, who seems ageless.
Seems to just
which is a good thing.
Always score in the 30s. An Io DeSumo, Illinois guy.
Io is, I mean, this is, if there's anything, it's that opportunity for Io.
IOL
person,
all right.
There's that opportunity, though, that Io has gotten now, and to show a chance that he probably would not have gotten otherwise.
Yeah, no, he looked great in his first year. Lots of potential. I want to talk about Jerry Reinsdorf's other team. There's some stories that they might interview Ozzie Guillen to come back and manage after the Tony La Russa fiasco. How accurate do you think that is?
Well, that'll be exciting if they hire him. We've seen him before. We know Ozzie's act. He can't speak without using swear words. He can't. I've asked him about it. He said, I just can't. It's not me.
Right.
Now, he does it on TV somehow. I don't know how.
I was just going to say, maybe
he censors himself.
Yeah, maybe
But he
TV's
can't do it when
changed
he's
him a little bit.
In a baseball.
He wants it, too. He wants this job. He's been lobbying to go back and do it. I mean, Jerry Reinsdorf, you know, he settled that old score with Tony La Russa. I have this joke where, you know, maybe Kid Gleason, who managed the 1919 Black Sox, you know, maybe he got a raw deal that Jerry Reinsdorf wants to make whole right now.
Yeah. It's kind of a blessing in a way that La Russa has the health issue that gave him a way out.
Right.
And Jerry Reinsdorf is not a person who fires people. He's very loyal. He, you know, I always say he named the Berto Center where the Bulls practiced for years and years and years after his secretary when she died. And so he's very loyal, very passionate about things like that. You might not think so, but he doesn't fire people even when maybe they should be. Now, if Kenny Williams, who is still there, if they can handle Ozzie coming back, I mean, you know Ozzie wants it badly. There's nothing like being the guy in the dugout. They dig it.
It'd be fun.
It certainly would be fun, and there'd be a lot of fun quotes for sports reporters.
It'd be a new dimension.
As a newspaper writer, yeah, it's like when Mike Ditka left, we all were like, oh no, you know, it was sad.
Gave you all kinds of material. How much does the Bears management believe in Justin Fields? Because there's a lot of talk about the new general manager did not invest much in the offense around Justin Fields, and you see the struggles.
Yeah, Ryan Poles, the new GM. He's got a plan for the future. You know, it's kind of like we're supposed to wait and see what happens this year. This is all about Fields' development. The unfortunate part is if you don't surround somebody with the talent and the coaching and the continuity, then how do you develop? And if he has another, Rick and I were.
This is sustainable
with
Fields. I
then
mean,
he's going to even be upright
that's
if
what
this
I mean.
keeps happening.
By we get to week 8, if he's
Well,
still
we were
standing.
talking beforehand. One more game like last week, I think he'll be injured.
You wonder what it does to his mental development
can't be
too.
good.
I mean, so what do you think that they've figured out their problems for a Monday night against New England?
Well, the problem is Bill Belichick is tied for second place all time with victories with, guess who? George Halas. And if he wins this game, he'll be only behind, God, who's
Curly
behind?
Lambeau or the Packers guy?
Kid Gleason, as
Kid
he brought up.
Gleason.
No, the old Miami coach.
Shula.
Yeah,
Don
I think
Shula.
it's Don Shula. Yes, I think Don Shula.
That's some trivia. So Don Shula's the
He's not
all-time
going to
winningest.
lose on Monday night.
All right, so
at home.
that's got to be motivation for the Bears, though, to not let George Halas fall behind.
Listen, if
Do you think any of them remember who George Halas is, other than the GSH?
Yeah, they don't
what does that
It's on
mean?
there just
What does that mean?
We're out of time. We're out of time. This is a great discussion, but unfortunately we have to leave it. So we're thankful for Lynn Sweet, Rick Pearson, Monica Eng, and Rick Tellender for joining us. Thank you all so much. And that is our show for this Friday night. Don't forget you can get Chicago Tonight and the Weekend Review streamed on Facebook, YouTube, and our website, WTTW.com/news. And be sure to join us tomorrow night at 6 for Chicago Tonight Latino Voices, and then immediately after that, Chicago Tonight Black Voices at 6:30. And then, of course, we're back at 7 o'clock all next week. And now for the Weekend Review, I'm Paris Schutz. Thank you all so much for watching. Stay healthy and safe, and enjoy this warm weekend.
Closed captioning is made possible by Robert A. Clifford and Clifford